Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive Positive Recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to yet another installment of Positive Recovery MD podcast with one of your hosts, Dr. Jason Powers.
And Julie Genaro.
And we've got three awesome guests for you. We've got Dr. Peggy Brewer-Dowling. She's a psychologist with significant training and expertise in the fields of trauma and eating disorders. She's extremely passionate about providing hope and recovery to people who struggle with eating disorders and trauma. Dr. Brewer-Dowling completed her undergraduate degree at the University of Colorado Boulder in 1987, earned her master's degree from Boston University, and completed her doctor's degree in clinical psychology from the University of the Rockies with an emphasis in eating disorders and group psychotherapy. Dr. Brewer-Dowling is both the founder and director of Bulimia Self Help.com, a web-based therapy program for people who are struggling with Bulimia Nervosa, who may not be able to access traditional therapy programs. She's also currently working in private practice in Austin, Texas. Our next doctor, psychologist, licensed psychologist, Dr. Logan. She served for the past 30 years as a police psychologist with two metropolitan police departments, first Colorado Springs and then Austin. In addition, she's maintained active secondary employment as an executive coach and adjunct faculty member for the Center for Creative Leadership, an international leadership training organization that is listed in the top 10 of Business Week magazine. In this role, she's been providing executive coaching to mid and top level corporate clients with Fortune 500 companies within a variety of industries. In the past years, she's held a tenure-track academic appointment as a professor and clinician at the University of Iowa, served as a court psychologist for the 23rd Judicial District in Salem, Virginia, was the chief psychologist at Catawba State Psychiatric Hospital in Catawba, Virginia, and she's received grants from the National Institute of Justice and more, recently from the city of Austin to conduct research on the use of EMDR with police officers. The NIJ study was published in the International Journal of Stress Management in 2001. She's the author of a chapter for the fourth edition of the textbook Stress Management in Law Enforcement, edited by Leonard Territo and James D. Sewell. She's also certified as a sports psychologist. Genaro Sandoval, he works within our family. I've known him for a while, but I just don't have your bio. So tell us who you are.
It'll be very short and sweet. So yes, I'm part of the Positive Recovery family, which has been awesome. I have a master's degree from St. Edward's University, so I'm studying to finish up my LPC and my LMFT licenses. So I've been studying for those board exams. So I'm also an LCDC, and I've been working with the Austin Police Department for the past 10 years or so. Started off with victim services, and then started working with peer support and doing trainings and stuff that didn't work. I started working with Dr. Carol because I was an intern and I needed help, and I said, please, I'm coming. I need an internship. She's like, sure. Where do I sign you up? So now I'm part of her research project with Dr. Logan over there at the Austin Police Department and Vanderbilt University in the University of Texas at Austin.
Did you say you were a research subject?
Yes.
Are you a policeman?
A little bit of both.
I had no idea you were a police officer.
No, not a police officer. Victim services.
Tell me about that. So I was going to ask how you guys knew each other. Now I know you guys are all working on the same program, the same study.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about it. I know it's applying EMDR in certain populations that don't necessarily have acute trauma, like you're trying to expand the application of EMDR. Dr. Logan, if you could first explain to our listeners, what does EMDR stand for and what is it? Then if you would, talk about how your practice evolved away from talk therapy onto EMDR with the police officer population.
Let me start with that about evolving away from talk therapy. Well, that started with, I was trained in EMDR, and EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing. And it's a therapy technique that was discovered in 1988. And since then, there's been a lot of research on EMDR. And what it involves is having the person discuss strong feelings they're having or troubling issues that they're having, and an image of that. And it can be a traumatic memory, or it can be a feeling that they're having now, like strong anger or depression. And you have them move their eyes back and forth by following either my fingers, or I have a wand, or some people have a light bar. So moving your eyes back and forth, that mimics REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And with moving your eyes back and forth, right and left, what it does, the brain is able then to reprocess that trauma or the difficult feelings. So that movement of that eye movement brings you down much more into the very experiential part of this and away from the analytic, rational brain. So you really get down into the feeling, the experience of the feeling, down into the subcortical regions where the trauma is actually stored. And so that is, I found to be a huge benefit. You get away from all the rational analytic thinking, and you're down where the trauma actually is. And when you get down away from all those defenses, you can do a lot of therapy very quickly and much more effectively than if you're dealing with all the rational analytic thinking. So I could see with the population. And so when I was trained in it, I could see immediately how this really worked much better, and especially with police officers who are, as you say, active people. They're not more the intellectual analytic type. And so I used that in my individual therapy for years, and I found it to be a very effective way to do therapy very quickly, and the officers seemed to like it and find it effective. And so after a while, I started thinking, wow, what I'm finding is that officers all have trauma from their jobs that they have compartmentalized and just stuffed down over years. Toddlers out of a backyard swimming pool and trying to do CPR while the mother is screaming beside them, or going to the scene of a suicide where the family is grieving and you're dealing with a dead body, and just horrific kind of situations that they have to deal with, as well as situations in which they themselves are in physical danger if somebody has a weapon. So they have trauma. Every one of them has trauma if they've been on the street. So it occurred to me that every one of them can benefit from EMDR, not just ones who are hitting bottom or have some terrible symptoms. They all could benefit. And so I thought, well, this is too cumbersome to do one-on-one therapy. I want to figure out a way that we can make this available to people on a more widespread level. And that's when the grant came through. I saw that there was grant money, and I thought, well, let's figure out how to do a 3-session package of EMDR. Just get them in there, the EMDR immediately, and have a 3-session package. And that way we can measure it also. We can give psychological testing in before they have the treatment, and we can give psychological testing after they have the treatment, and we can measure whether it makes a difference, because I was seeing a difference, and I thought it would come out in the testing as well. So that's why we applied for the grant, and that's why we set up a 3-session package. And we, you have to compare it to a control group. And we thought, well, let's use something analytic and rational that's been the standard kind of treatment for police officers for 40 years. And that would be a stress management program, which is more analytic and rational. And so we compared it with a 3-session package of stress management. And so that's basically how the research was set up.
You said EMDR had some evidence behind it. And so I want you to define for us, like, what is success? You said it's effective. What would be success? And then as it's applied to your study right now, what are you measuring exactly? You said psychological testing. And if the measurement's something you can't share till you publish, I get that. But are you measuring subjective accounts of, feeling depressed or suicidal, or what exactly are you measuring?
Well, in addition to the research we have, it's a pilot project as well. And so one of the things that we're most excited about. We don't have the results from the psychological testing. I do from the Colorado Springs study, and that was positive results. But we have officers saying, wow, I feel so much better. Thank you. Can I have more? Now, when you have an officer, a police officer asking for more therapy and saying, wow, that was great, well, then you've got success here.
Yeah.
And so we're really thrilled because officers, you have to, grab them by the throat and drag them into therapy ordinarily. But what they are finding is, we get down to business fast. We get down to the subcortical regions fast. All this emotion comes up and they can see immediately that it's helping. So one of the goals of our 3-session package was we wanted them to have immediate results, because we didn't want to drag them along for 3 sessions where we're going to talk about all of this and how to strategize and coping mechanisms, and 3 sessions and what are their symptoms. And if you have to list your symptoms, you're listing your faults. And that's kind of a shame-based activity, and they don't like doing that. So we wanted to dispense with all the preliminaries, especially for these action-oriented people that want to get down to business. And so we did. We said, nope, we're not going to talk about all your symptoms and all this. We're going to go right to where the trouble is, and we're going to go with EMDR. We're going to go deep down into the subcortical regions. And also we wanted to hook them in so that they knew this works. And we wanted to do that in the first session, because you have to do that with police officers. They'll get bored, or they'll say, this is just, this is not working. We set it up to have immediate results.
Is this the first 3-session or short session EMDR of its kind?
Well, it's the most condensed.
Yes.
It is a format that is different, and nobody's done that format before. Now, EMDR is very well laid out, and the research is very careful, and they have an 8-phase process. And we have not messed with that 8 phases, but we have condensed it, and we have changed the order of it a bit. So we do everything that's necessary to call it EMDR, but we do make it more intense, and we move at a faster pace than regular clients. And we do that. We can do that because of the population that we're working with. We're working with police officers who have a very difficult job that they've been able to do, and action-oriented people, and they've been on the job for a while. So we know their defense mechanisms are good, and they're high-functioning professionals. When you're working in a therapy population with clients, they come when they're hurting. And often your clients, when you're doing one-on-one therapy, are a little bit more vulnerable and fragile at that time in their life. And so we had to push. We have 18 therapists that we hired on this grant, the best EMDR therapists. And we had to say, no, you got to get in the first sessions, go with it, and go to the difficult trauma and jump right in. And they said, oh, Dr. Logan, I don't think we can do that. And Peggy and I had to deal with a lot of those therapists. And we had to push them and say, these guys know how to compartmentalize. Peggy's phrase is, they run toward the bullets. And Peggy should know because her father was a police officer. So we say they are resilient. And so we push those therapists to go fast and don't be so gentle and tiptoe around. And they did it reluctantly. And they go, oh, my God, I can't believe how fast these officers can go and how quickly they can process through that. So we found that it works. I don't know that it would work with everybody. So in this package with this population, we have a more intense, faster paced, aggressive, vigorous type of therapy. And we're always ready if we have to back up and use our clinical skills, because we do have a problem here. But no, it is, in answer to your question, Dr. Powers, yes, it is much more of a dynamic kind of system than has been done in other situations.
Awesome. And I just want to say that I love mavericks like you, Peggy and Genaro. Carol, it sounds like you're the type of person that you were in the field long enough and you learn the rules, and then you learn how to extend beyond them. A lot of mistakes people make is they don't know the rules first, or they don't really get familiar with things, and they just want to do things different for the sake of doing them different. So kudos to you. But let me ask you this. What contraindications are there for doing EMDR? And what are like the worst pitfalls that can happen? You did talk about like that your clinical acumen, or you guys know how to intervene when you see things that come up. But are there any reasons why somebody shouldn't do EMDR? And what's like the worst case scenario?
I'm going to let Dr. Brewer talk to that because she's worked with a different population than I have and probably has come across that more than I have. And Genaro too.
Right. Well, as you say, and you jump in there where you need to. I think the thing is, as responsible psychologists, we always want to do a preliminary test to figure out, how much trauma is in there before you just decide you're just going to jump right in and see where you are. So we use the DES, dissociative experiences, or dissociative experiences scale. What we want to know is what is likely to happen and how much trauma has there been. And so it's not that we say, no, we're not going to do it if they score high. We just want to be aware of that. Oftentimes we might see dissociation. We might see someone becoming very agitated, very angry. And we want to make sure, so we put things in place to make sure that they can regulate and that we can bring them, have their activation level come down. And whether that's a calm, safe place or a container exercise or something that we've set up in advance to make sure that they have that safety net under them. So that those would probably be the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I think for me, I've been really fortunate in working from an intensive outpatient program. So I started using EMDR at my IOP clinic, and every time I came for supervision with Dr. Logan, I came frustrated because we weren't moving fast enough. We were stuck. So I had to reevaluate protocol. I had to reevaluate using a different protocol that we're stuck in going a different avenue. So I kept talking to Carol, we're not moving fast. We're not going fast enough. And on my end that I've been doing EMDR with officers, we've been moving so fast, so quickly. We've been reprocessing things very quickly, going like maybe 3 or 4 memories and moving through the process. But with patients from an outpatient civilian world, we were moving at a much slower pace for many reasons. One, because they were still learning how to use their coping management strategies. They were learning how to use their external resources. These were guys that, hey, I don't ask for help because I can do this all myself. And I had to come back and teach them, no, we need to reach out for help. Let's use these external resources. Let's use some of your strengths. Dr. Brewer and I have talked a lot about doing the exact same protocol, 3-session protocol for the addictions portion. And I've been using some of the relapse prevention planning stuff and creating some of those worksheets and external resources. So I've been practicing that a little bit more with my guys, using this model and doing it here. And now I'm like, hey, Carol, I've been practicing, like I want to run it by you. And it still is not as fast, but it's going slowly, but they're getting something out of it. And we're getting to the trauma while at the same time using the safe place, calm place, using some of their strengths and incorporating their positive strengths or positive goals into that relapse prevention or EMDR, which is using a little bit of the detour model with the regular EMDR. So it's been pretty neat. And, again, it's like, where are those resources? Are they coming from like a stable environment already? And how well are they able to use these external resources or not?
Have there been any cases that stand out that you can share with us? Of course, removing personal identifiers that made you realize, okay, this condensed EMDR is going to really work effectively in the addict population.
I think the thing is when we're trying to get to that addict population, right? The addiction isn't the problem. It's the stuff that's underneath. That's the problem usually. Mm-hmm. We just can't get there. They're very well defended. And so what we want to do is they are the perfect population for this because it helps them bypass some of those defenses that they've worked so hard to put in place. And so whether that's eating disorders, drugs and alcohol, gambling, it doesn't matter, any of those. So what we want to do is say, let's get the stuff underneath. And then then you won't be battling doing exactly what you don't want to do or what you do want to do, or feel like you need to do.
The thing that we're super excited about having Dr. Logan and Dr. Dowling and G on this podcast is that all of Dr. Logan's experiences, 30 years with the force, whether that was in Colorado, whether that was in Austin, the city of Austin now, where she's at, in the spirit of being very progressive and forward thinking, they were looking for ways to kind of find different ways of helping people within the city of Austin. And so there was like tons of things that were submitted for this project. And so many different reiterations. I think there was like 100 different projects that were submitted. And so to get to this point where the 3-session treatment package for the police officers, out of so many submissions, just really says how needed it was, right? And so when we look at the 3 treatment package that's being offered, and Dr. Logan has spoken to the fact that the police officers are saying, yes, this is helping me, give me more, which we know to be different than what we would expect, right? Particularly from that population.
Right.
Something's working right. And so through all this, with the scientific kind of research component of it and all the great work that Dr. Dowling and Dr. Logan and G have been doing, we're finding really good outcomes. We know that trauma, right? When we talk about it, it is not just in the life of a police officer and what they see in the workforce. It gets extended into their homes, into their relationships. When we're talking about it from the world of positive recovery centers, there's not a client that we treat that doesn't have some type of trauma, right? They didn't get to us without experiencing trauma in some way, shape, or form. So I love what Dr. Logan and Dr. Dowling and G have taken to do, and that is to find solutions to help people work through trauma faster so that they can really begin to heal and it doesn't come out sideways all over the place. And so, through this and the studies that you've been doing, I know you're getting ready to present or most recently did present. I know COVID kind of stopped some of the presentations, but I think you guys were in DC or virtually presenting on your findings. And so could you share just a little bit about what you presented, what that looked like? And then just want to say that I'm so glad to be part of this conversation. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your kind words. And right now, the Colorado Springs study is completed and we got results on our psychological testing measures. And you asked a while ago what those testing measures were, and we've got basically the same ones here, but we used just psychological tests that were already developed and reliable and valid. And one would be the symptom checklist, a 90 symptom checklist. So people before they go, you have stomach problems, headaches, depression, lack of energy, all these symptoms that you can possibly have. And so the officers will check how many symptoms they have before, and then a few months later after the treatment, they'll check again. And in Colorado Springs, we got a difference. They were better. We got a difference on the people who had had the EMDR treatment and not on the people who had had the stress management treatment. So symptom checklist is one. A job stress survey is another. Here's what we found very important, because now in the news, that police brutality, we call it police excessive use of force. It's a problem. We agree it's a problem, and it's in the national spotlight now. And so we believe that this can be a preventive treatment for police excessive use of force or police brutality. And if that is the case, we really got something here. And we don't just have to fire these officers, but we think they have PTSD underlying it. And so anyway, how do you measure, there's a less chance of getting excessive use of force. We use an anger measurement, a state trait anger measurement. So that's one instrument that we're really looking forward to seeing if there's change on that measure, a whole battery of psychological testing.
So you guys just made it happen, right? And so now we're seeing these results. What's next, right? So we have these results. We know that they're helping. We know they're improving. We know that the 3 EMDR treatment episodes helped. So what's next?
Well, Julie, let me say, we don't have the results from this Austin study. And in many ways, in 20 years, we've learned a lot, and we have a more sophisticated approach to it. And we are working with, as I said, researchers from Vanderbilt University, the 15th ranked university in the nation. And if they're interested in this, and also the University of Texas LBJ School of Public Affairs. And so we have top level researchers interested, and they're interested because it's public policy, because they're looking this help with police the research part of this. Pilot program, because we can't say the results are in, but we can talk about the pilot program, meaning what we see about responding. And what we're seeing there is very promising because they are daring to talk about their experience and encourage other officers to come. And when their 3 sessions are over, some of them who have had feeder memories come up and realize, oh my God, I had childhood abuse. They're begging for more therapy. And it's the word of mouth is great. And so, we are presenting right now on the basis of that the pilot program.
Right. And you asked what's next. And I think we've got 2 directions here. So one is what we noticed anecdotally is that police officers are high functioning. They're not crumbling away and they come to therapy so they can feel better. They are like tuck and go. I've got all these things. I'm going to keep going. But what happens is eventually they get kind of bumped off their trajectory and then they're kind of limping along. And when we feel like that fight, flight, or freeze system is on overdrive or it's shut down, then that's when we're more likely to see excessive use of force. That's when we're more likely to see police suicide and those things. And so that's where we're bringing this back. And so we have an aggression type of scale that we're trying to figure out too. We want to know if it's helping with that. But the anecdotal piece that's really exciting is that we're seeing that high functioning people, we don't have to wait till people are crumbling away to say, this can help you. This can help you be more fully present in your life. This can help you. It's 3 sessions and it's intense. We've got, emergency room doctors. We've got nurses. We've got judges, lawyers, their child protective services. We've got so many, and those are just a few, but this is the exciting part, is that we don't have to wait till they're like, oh, I can't do my job anymore. Or, oh, I've got to see someone. We're high functioning people. We want to get a booster and get back on the road and keep doing what we love to do. And there's so much hope in this. So we're excited to bring that piece forward as well. So that was one piece. And the other piece is we want to go out to more police departments and we want to say, this is fantastic. This helps the morale. The hidden curriculum is everyone's talking to each other about stuff that's going on for them instead of keeping it tucked away. We want to be able to go out and say, we're bringing it to your police department. It's 3 sessions. Everybody gets it. We don't have to, if you've been an officer on the street for a year, you got some trauma, let's deal with it and move on. Part of Carol's plan is that this is part of the ongoing part of being an officer. This is a way to stay true to yourself and on track and not be bumped off your trajectory and have to just kind of force yourself through your life. So it's giving life back to the officers themselves. It's hope for many professionals in the future. And I think that it is going to have a huge impact on public policy, which is so exciting.
Well said, Peggy. And one of the things, Dr. Powers, you were talking about how another theme here is government agencies and innovation. And government agencies are bureaucracies. I've worked for many myself, and they tend to stifle innovation. So I really have just a lot of respect for the city of Austin and city council for really wanting to do the innovation. And we have had battles because we're still up against the bureaucracy and a police department policy and procedure. It is difficult to do research in a field setting in police department. So that, and you called me a maverick, and I'm going to cherish that forever. Thank you. But the Austin Police Department is really doing something special here because, see, we're offering it through the department. When officers can get EMDR now, but they have to search it out from an individual therapist on their Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. This gives it much more widespread access and makes it okay for officers to go on a more systemic institutional basis. And that's going to be a struggle if we're going to sell it to other departments. And so that is something, so we'll look at the clinical aspects. We're also having to look at how to sell it and how to sell it not only to police officers, which is in itself how do you sell therapy to a police officer, but also to police institutions. And so we have before us a lot of challenges, but it is exciting. And I would like to say, too, that all along when the city of Austin invested in this, and then we did have obstacles and challenges, but all along we've had people jump in and believe in it and help. And I'm going to put you, Dr. Powers, and you, Julie, as part of that right now, because you're helping us out. And certainly Dr. Brewer and Genaro have jumped in and really dedicated a lot of their time, as well as officers who've stepped up to the plate and given testimonials about their experience in EMDR. I had an assistant chief stand up in a chief staff meeting because we gave him a free sample of the EMDR, and I was supposed to talk about the program. Before I could even talk about the program, he jumped up in the chief staff meeting and said, "Let me tell you about my EMDR session." And he was so enthused, and he's a well-respected guy. And he told about an incident where it was very tragic. And he says, and she's moving her eyes, I'm moving my eyes back and forth, and I'm crying like a baby. And he actually said this in a staff meeting in an enthusiastic way, because he said, I've thought about things that I haven't thought about in 20 years. And when I was done, it felt so much better. And that kind of a testimonial from an officer himself, I can't beat that with my statistics and my research.
I do want to say thank you so much for G, for just always talking about the great work that Dr. Logan and Dr. Dowling are doing together as you move forward on these projects. We're grateful to have you on the podcast today. I learned a lot. I hope our listeners learned a lot. Is there anywhere that you would recommend folks to go if they want to know more about EMDR?
Yes, there is the EMDR International Association, or EMDRIA. If you Google that, EMDRIA, EMDR International Association, it will take you to their webpage, and there's all kinds of information there. And there's a 9-minute video about EMDR that's very useful. Maybe I can give you the link and you can dispense it with this video.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and move into our positive intervention. I'm going to put G on the spot today. I think that both Dr. Logan and Dr. Dowling did the positive intervention, but just in keeping time, I'm going to ask G to share his experience. I'll start by reading, and then we'll ask G to share his experience today. So today's positive intervention is first with the quote by Richard Carlson and Joseph Bailey. Despite our best efforts to manage our time efficiently, and despite the many time-saving devices designed to make life easier, our lives often seemed filled to the brim. We cram our days with activities, thinking that each one of them is important and absolutely necessary. We schedule virtually every minute of every day. We say we want free time, but few of us can sit still, even for a moment. So one time-saving piece of technology that has essentially become an extension of each person is the cell phone. These little beauties connect us to others, help us get where we need to go, and find us the closest Ethiopian restaurant in less than 5 seconds. Should we fancy somewhat a top injera? Cell phones are great, but like most things, they must be used judiciously. In one study, researchers discovered that the mere presence of a cell phone could decrease the quality of conversations and the trust and closeness experienced between the subjects or the persons. While that little bit of information could be shrugged off as self-evident, there are two particularly remarkable findings in this study. The cell phone used in the study did not belong to either person, and the presence of it affected deep conversations, but not superficial ones. If you're after relationships as a means to happiness, next time you're with someone, put the cell phone out of sight. So I found this interesting because we're talking with researchers, and this was about some research, but also about few of us can sit still even for a minute. G is probably one of the hardest people that I can get to sit still. So when this exercise was part for him, I was like, okay, this is beautiful. So G, share with us about your experience with the positive intervention. Which specifically was that you were supposed to put your phone away and keep it hidden from sight. Did it make a difference in you? And was it difficult to do? And how were you affected?
So yes, this was very difficult. When we were filming our research presentation, the Troy, he was filming us. He's like, "Can you please stand still? You're rocking, you're moving like the camera. You're making me nauseous." So there's a lot of energy there. So what I ended up doing is we went hiking to the Comal River, and I left my phone at home. It was kind of accidentally. I left it at home, and I could have turned back, but I left it at home, and I just pretty much just gave my attention to this is weird, my wife, to my wife and my dogs, and just kind of it was like a 45-minute drive out to the state park. So we were out there, hung out, and we were pretty much out there all day. So I was without a phone. And for the first part of it, I'm like, I already know I'm going to have all these email messages from work and from the research participants that we've been doing and some of the officers I've been working with. And, I just kept thinking about that for the first 20 minutes of the drive. And finally, I just had to let it go and just take some deep breaths and just say, you know what, right now, I just need to focus on what I need to do right now in front of me and give my undivided attention to my family and stuff. And after that, it was pretty easy. It was pretty easy of doing that, and it was okay. So yeah, so I had fun with that.
Yeah, and so with the research, and I think Dr. Powers can speak to this probably a little bit more clearly, but with the research, I know that they talk about the cell phone being on the table and not even belonging to anyone at the table, and people are still impacted and affected by it because it's a distraction, I guess.
Yeah, the study was done where they had 2 research participants, and then they had someone else's cell phone just on a side table, and then that was compared to a group who didn't have one. And then they rated how much they enjoyed the conversation, how much they trusted the person. And when the cell phone was invisible, not invisible, but visible, when there was a cell phone there, people rated it less, pleasant. There was less trust with the person they were meeting, and they were strangers in both groups. And then they followed up that study where they thought, well, maybe it's only superficial conversations that the phone, sort of affects. So they had one group, they repeated it. One group with the cell phone, they talked about the coolest thing that's happened to you in the last year. And then the superficial, that was a deep conversation. The superficial conversation was the value of like fake Christmas trees. And you know what? It impacted the deep conversation more than the superficial. It impacted both of them. But right, just having your cell phone out, even if you're not on it, is like a suck of trust and kind of like value, intimacy. And so, Genaro, you should always unintentionally leave your cell phone.
Ask him how many cell phones he has.
Oh, no, I'm not it. Because then I'll just think he's a drug dealer.
Well, I remember when I took Dr. Powers' first PRC, positive recovery training, and I walked in this class, I had these phones, and he had a basket. He's like, cell phones, cell phones, cell phones. And he let me have mine because IOP, and I was figuring it out. And I was like, on my phone, he's like, give me your cell phone. I was like, anxiety. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So yes, he took it away from me.
So all of our guests on today's podcast will be receiving a copy of the Positive Recovery Daily Guide written by Dr. Jason Powers, our founder, and we'll be getting those out to you in the mail. And I'm just so excited to have the work that you guys are doing and grateful for you being on our show today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Really, thank you.
Thank you, guys. And this is Powers and Denofa signing out. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4-SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.